A little something different. All right. Welcome to the EB Sports Report. First of all, that was a great song by Seattle duo The Satisfaction Sweat. Shouts out to my cousins. I love y'all. But I figured I'd bring back the music because the last video was right to the business. So, we got some new coaches in SoCal. We got UCLA and USC both hiring new coaches at the same time. And just when I was about to think about Steve Alford, here comes USC, who decides to get Andy Enfield from Florida Gulf Coast. Now, what do I think about these hires? Let's start with my Bruins because on a personal note, I dig Steve Alford. I think he's obviously one of the best players of the 80s in college basketball, one of the best shooters of the 80s. And, you know, I think he's definitely going to be a nice buzz hire for UCLA. But here are my questions for Mr. Alford. Number one, can you recruit the same way you recruited at New Mexico? Now, he was able to recruit Kendall Williams after Ben Howland pretty much cast him off, and Steve Alford made him to the Player of the Year in the conference. He was able to recruit Tony Snell out of Riverside King, who played with Kawhi Leonard. Very good hire. Very good sleeper recruit. Now he's at UCLA. He has to find a way to continue recruiting that same way out here with the top players. Now, the big problem I had with Ben Howland was that he wasn't able to get SoCal guys. Guys were getting out of here, going to Cal, going to Arizona, and everything like that. So Steve Alford's got to be able to tap into the recruiting system here and be a presence. I mean, I saw Ben Howland in a couple of games when I cover high school sports. I saw Tim Floyd in a lot more games. I feel like Tim Floyd wanted to recruit when he was at USC. He wanted to get kids who could play, and he did. You know? So I think Steve Alford has to be a presence, for one. Two, is he just Ben Howland who's younger? I've looked at some stuff on Steve Alford's coaching, and as much as I enjoyed watching New Mexico a little bit last year, they play a similar style. They're very defensive-oriented, very slow down, very patient. It's definitely not the wide-open style that I'd love to see, but, you know, we're going to see what he can do with better personnel around him. So I think I'm curious to see how he's going to play and if he's going to adjust his style a little bit because, let's face it, you're at UCLA, you can't do that slow-down style anymore. You got to be able to play more up tempo a little bit. And three, and this is probably the most important, is Steve Alford another Steve Lavin? And by that I mean, Steve Lavin's career at UCLA to me was pretty underrated by some people who really felt he wasn't a great coach while he was here. I grew up in the Steve Lavin era. I thought Steve Lavin's era was phenomenal for two reasons. One, he recruited. Two, he got to the Sweet 16 consistently. And you can't beat that. So Steve Alford, on the other hand, is almost like the reverse Steve Lavin. He's put up he's a winner in the regular season, but in the NCAA tournament, he hasn't really done that well. And we all saw what happened this year when he had a number 3 seed in New Mexico, and they just got outplayed by Harvard. And I mean outplayed badly. I looked at some stuff. He's had 3 number 3 seeds, and he's lost in the first round every time. Meanwhile, you got Steve Lavin, whose teams got decent seeds, but they always won. They got to that second weekend. So it's almost like he's a bizarro Steve Lavin almost, except we don't know how well he can recruit and we don't know how well he's going to do in the tournament. I mean, getting to the tournament, that's not going to cut it. I think UCLA needs to be a program that is consistently good in the Pac-12 as well as a player on the national scene in a sense. Now, I'm not expecting them to be top 5 right away because that's not going to happen. But I expect them to be competitive. And the jury's still out. I think there's definitely reason to be optimistic, even though I think UCLA's athletic department did a very poor job of coming up with these high standards and throwing out names they weren't going to get, like Billy Donovan and Rick Pitino, and then watching Shaka Smart and Brad Stevens go away. That really kind of hurt them a little bit. So it's kind of like, oh, we got Steve Alford. Okay. So that said, though, I think it's a better hire, I think, than USC hiring Andy Enfield, because check out his resume. 2 years at Florida Gulf Coast. We saw what they did in the NCAA tournament this year. But you're hiring a guy who's only had 2 good years. If Steve Alford was a buzz hired, this is literally grabbing the hottest guy you can get and saying, come on, we're going to pay you really well. Now, I like Florida Gulf Coast, how they play. They were way more wide open. I think guys are going to want to play for that style. And it's probably going to make a great impact. But it's a mixed bag, because, as I saw some of my colleagues say, if they're going to hire somebody who has 2 years of experience, not to mention someone who's obviously been an assistant in the NBA, why not hire a high school coach or someone who's been a college assistant that knows LA a little bit more? Why not go that far? If you're going to hire a hot coach, okay, I get that. But experience-wise, why not get somebody who has ties here? So I think USC did what they needed to do. They grabbed somebody who was hot, who's going to, increase interest. But it'll be curious to see what Enfield does here. I'm not totally sure, and I think it'll be very interesting to see what he can do in USC. Both guys, I do think, need to recruit Southern California very well. That's going to be very important. I think it's going to be interesting to see how well they do in 3 years. I don't think the first year will be a good gauge, but maybe the second or third year. I do think UCLA is in a better position to win more. USC, the cover's a little bit bare, but they do have a great recruit in Rashawn Prince and Long Beach Poly out here, who I think can make an impact right away and help them out a little bit. So that's kind of what I feel about them. But in my opinion, the best coaching hire recently of this week that happened in SoCal, Reggie Theus at Cal State Northridge. Why? Because Reggie Theus knows the LA area. He's Inglewood raised, went to Inglewood High School. He knows LA. I used to see him all the time at games when I cover high school basketball a little bit more. I'd see him at games a lot. 2, his son's at Fairfax High School, which is going to keep him involved and know who's the hottest kids to watch around. 3, he's well overdue to coach. He's paid his dues. He's coaching the LA Defenders right now in the NBA Development League, and he needs a shot. The NBA didn't work out too well for him, but he deserves another shot, and I think people need to see if he can be as good a coach as he was on Hang Time. And I have to say, because I grew up watching that show, I loved Hang Time growing up as a kid. So I really hope that Reggie gets a chance to show what he can do at Cal State Northridge. And I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be really good. Northridge always finds a way to get great kids there, too. So who knows what could happen. Could it be an arms race for kids in Southern California now? Time will tell. But 3 new coaches. I love Reggie Theus. It's probably the best hire of the 3. But time will tell how I feel in 2 years on Alford and Enfield. So that's my thoughts. Going to give you some more of this dissatisfaction real quick. Peace.